Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, hello everyone. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Expert. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have nearly 40 years of experience at NIH, first as an applicant, then as an intramural researcher, as a staff writer for longtime director Dr. Francis Collins, and for the last 20 years or so as a full-time NIH grant editor and mentor and trainer. So my company's helped clients land nearly $700 million in federal funding, and I'm here to answer your NIH grant writing questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So a reminder that if you are attending live, you're in listen only mode. You can start typing questions anytime you like into the Q&A box. I'll be monitoring that. And if you're watching this as a recording, either from within our the membership or on our open YouTube channel. A reminder that today is August 5th, 2026, and everything I say today is true to the best of my knowledge, but things change very quickly at NIH. So please double check everything with the NIH website and program officers to make sure it's still accurate. So what you should be watching in the library right now, given that it's early August, I think a lot of you are probably in the thick of writing for R and K deadlines at the moment. The new deadlines are in early to mid-October for R and K, and in early to mid-November for the resubmissions of the R and K series. So I would say probably within your respective writing course, whatever that might be, master the R series, master the K series, master resubmissions. Hopefully you've moved past the early chapters that talk about preparation and are kind of in the thick of the chapters that deal with writing. So for example, on master the R series, that would be like chapters 3 and 4, for example. Hopefully you're in the thick of that. Other things to know, I just yesterday I recorded an update to Master the R series. So I completely re-recorded chapter 1 to reflect recent changes. So I do this every summer. I update that course. I updated select lessons in chapter 2, and I updated some of the digital workbook for chapters 3 and 4. That update, together with an update to the NIH grant writing program, should be out probably by the end of August, early September, the latest. So just so that people are aware of that. In terms of NIH, what you should know is that there was an announcement, I believe it was last Friday, that said that starting after this cycle, so for FY27 is the way it was worded, which I think, typically means for deadlines on or after January 25th. There will not be any more letters of support. Instead, NIH will accept letters of collaboration. So this seems like like kind of a minor change, but it's actually less work because what it essentially does is bring into alignment what other NIH with what other federal agencies do. It also means that you're not going to collect a letter from anybody who is key personnel and who submits a biosketch. So the only people who would submit any kind of letter are people who are not key personnel and have not submitted a biosketch and who are directly related to the project. So typically this letter of collaboration, for example, would come from a consultant. Just a small change coming on the horizon. Buried in that notice was that this would be part of Forms J launch. So apparently Forms J is on the horizon. We've barely got used to Forms I. We've been working in it for about a year and a half now. And that will be it. I guess the fall cycle will be the last Forms J cycle. Most form sets launch for deadlines on or after January 25th. So I am assuming that Forms J will launch for deadlines on or after January 25th, 2027. So just something to put on your horizon. There's a form set change on the horizon. What else? Was there something else? Oh yeah, and I'm just going to say again, I've been plugging this for everybody, but the high risk, high reward portfolio. You've heard me say it. I'm going to say it again. It's been all over my social media, my newsletter, all over the place. I've been announcing it everywhere I possibly can. Um, NIH is known for funding next logical steps research, except for their high risk, high reward portfolio, which consists of four mechanisms. One is the Pioneer Award, the DP1. Another is the Transformative R01, the TR01. Those are typically for any level or established investigators. And then two mechanisms that are geared towards early stage investigators. One is the DP2 and one is the DP5. So they have one deadline per year. The deadlines tend to, for the four mechanisms, span from like mid to late August through early September. And we missed last year when the new administration took office. They early expired these mechanisms and then did not re-release them. And it wasn't clear to me that this portfolio was going to be re-released. But then, and normally they're like re-released in like January for, deadlines in August and September. But so, January came and went, and I thought, well, that's it. We're not going to, another year is going to go by and we're not going to have these mechanisms. And then all of a sudden they released them over the summer, in early summer. So lo and behold, these mechanisms are active, and there are a handful of people frantically writing to these mechanisms. So the DP1, the Pioneer Award, that's the first deadline. It's coming up. I think it's August 17th. I have many clients who are interested in these mechanisms but simply don't have the time to get them written because they were not released with much notice. So if I were a betting gal, which I'm not at all, but if I were, I would say that a lot fewer applicants are going to be applying this cycle because there just hasn't been enough time. So if you have time to apply and these mechanisms are of interest to you, again, they're high risk, high reward, not the usual NIH fare of next logical steps. I would encourage you to check them out. High risk, high reward portfolio out of the office of the director at NIH, not the institutes, and funded out of the common fund, not the budget of a given institute. Just something to think about. Okay, so again, a bunch of people have signed on since I started. Just a reminder, you can start putting questions in the Q&A box, but I do have a mini tutorial on mistakes commonly made on the T32. So I have a course. The vast majority of you who are watching this have access to all of my courses. So it may be worth, if you've only been watching like one or two courses, it may be worth taking a look at your dashboard to see what else is available there that might be helpful to you. Even for R&K applicants, there are courses like the Human Subjects Form, the 4 rigorous scoring criteria that give you extra samples and detailed instructions for writing those sections. But there are also courses for writing in other mechanisms like center grants, Master the P series, cooperative agreements, Master the U series, and for institutional training grants, Master the T32, which is the most common of the institutional training grants. So what is an institutional training grant? It's something where your organization, your university, will apply for training slots. So they're applying for a certain number of slots, and at the time of application, they don't know who is going to fill the slots. So your institution, your university, will apply for these slots and then propose in the grant how they will select applicants to fill the slots. So, for example, MD PhD programs are usually set up this way, where an institution will have training slots that are funded through an NIH T32, and then they invite applicants and fill the slots. The advantage to your university, of course, is that it allows them to compete for the best trainees, whatever they might be. It could be graduate students, it could be postdocs, it could be MD PhD students, whatever it is. It allows them to compete for the best ones because you can offer them slots where everything is paid for. Like they don't have to worry about figuring out how to pay like tuition and that kind of thing. So they're quite nice to be able to have these. So I have a whole course on this. It is a 3-chapter course. It's about 3 hours total, but like all my courses, it's broken up into individual 5 to 8 minute videos so that you don't have to commit to sitting down and watching a multi-hour video. The first chapter, as with all of my writing courses, I'm planning how to plan the program because I'm passionate about planning to help move the needle in terms of your being competitive in a mechanism. Chapter 2 is all about writing the application and particularly the data tables and describing the data tables, which are really burdensome and probably the hardest part of writing a T32. And then chapter 3 is for writing the plan for instruction and responsible conduct of research, which is the RCR plan, plan for instruction and methods for enhancing reproducibility, and the letters of support. And then I end with mistakes commonly made. So I am going to give you a taste of what this course is like. I'm going to show you the part that deals with the mistakes commonly made. And 2 weeks, sorry, 2 weeks from now, we're not going to have a session because our office is closed. But there's another session in September that will deal with how to know when you're ready for a T32. So, but for now, let's talk about mistakes commonly made. So let me share my slides for that. Okay, so play from current slide. So hopefully you are seeing that as a slide. You're not seeing, hopefully you're not seeing anything but the slide. Hopefully you're not seeing the presenter view for that. Um, so I'm going to run through about a dozen mistakes commonly made on T32 applications. So the first one is that the vision of your program is not clear. So you can't just apply for a T32. You have to actually have some sense of what the vision is for this. So, what is your stated intent? Are you trying to create the next generation of leaders? Then you need some sort of formal leadership training in the program, and you need to state that that's the goal. Are you trying, is the goal of your training program to create innovators? If that's the case, then you need to add innovation and entrepreneurship training to your training program. Are you trying to develop translational scientists, which would be the case, for example, with MD PhD programs? Then you really want to focus on team science and teaching these trainees to what team science is, and putting together teams that involve everything from like basic science on up to clinicians so that you can develop a model of bench to bedside and bedside to bench again. So you really have to clearly articulate what the goal of the program is and how that's going to be reflected in exactly the unique type of training that all trainees are going to be expected to participate in. Because of course there's some element of the curriculum that's always going to be flexible and some element of the curriculum that will be fixed within a T32. So without a clear vision and consistent follow through in the program and in the trainings that are offered in the program, it's difficult for reviewers and program staff to assess impact. So the second one is it's not obvious how your T32 is unique from other training programs you offer. So one of the things that you want to do is that when you develop your idea for a T32, particularly if you are at a large and very active institution, you want to look at the other types of T programs, T-funded programs, or other types of training programs, not necessarily even funded through a T, that are offered, and make sure that yours does not overlap with those. Make sure that yours is completely unique. So one comment, and these are all like statements that I've lifted off of summary statements that I've seen on T32s, both funded and not funded, but critiques that I have seen multiple times on T32s. So for example, a statement might be, it's not obvious how your T32 is unique from other training programs you offer. So you have to really think about, you have to describe what those other training programs are on your campus and talk about how not only you're distinct from those, but also how you might synergize with the offerings of that other training program. So this is something that a lot of people write their T32 in a little bit of a vacuum on their campus, and they just figure like, I don't need to worry about these other T programs, T-funded programs on my campus, but you do. And reviewers are going to be looking at that. Another comment that I've seen more than once on T32 summary statements is you're not putting enough effort into recruiting the best candidates. So, and this is kind of, I've seen this worded in various ways on various summary statements, but it kind of boils down to this. So, what should you do if you're receiving a comment like that, or even proactively if you're trying to avoid a comment like that? You might recruit from your existing graduate student pool. You could develop more assertive outreach and communication plans. And sometimes there are entities on your campus that might be able to help with this. So talk to your pre-award support office and see if there are any offices or groups on campus that have well-established systems to help you reach out to different demographics on campus, because you might be able to partner with them and use their kind of well-established mechanisms for reaching them. And if you're really not getting a really juicy qualified pool of candidates, you could consider extending their deadline for applying for the slot that you have if you need to do that. This one I see quite a lot on T32 summary statements. You don't balance didactic and experiential learning. So, with the emphasis being on didactic. So, most people do a really good job of putting together didactic training programs and less good job of putting together experiential programs. So, as I've said, you want to offer a common core of coursework that every trainee has to complete no matter what, but provide some element of the curriculum that's flexible and allows a trainee to create an individualized training plan for that speaks to their goals. And of course, whatever the goal of the training program is, has to be part of that core curriculum. But trainees are going to want some flexibility to be able to train for their specific goals. So consider transitioning to flipped classrooms if you haven't already done this. If it's not set up, it will require some startup time for faculty. So if you're able to give them some percent effort back, like as a department chair or division chief, to be able to do that, that will be a good thing in terms of their ability to offer a flipped classroom curriculum, which is almost always favorably viewed by reviewers. And yeah, the second bullet, more release time or other incentives may be necessary for them to adopt this model. So somewhat related to this, I'll often see a comment about your training opportunities are not broad enough. And the next one is also kind of related to this. So you want to make sure you're offering a broader range of possible externships and experiences within your T32. You want to help students understand career opportunities in multiple settings, not just within academia. But you want to integrate these perspectives throughout the curriculum. So the risk here is that your program, which is hosted within an academic institution and run by people in academia, the fear is that the program is too heavily focused on academia and careers in academia, and typically reviewers want to see that you're exposing students to the breadth of opportunities that are out there beyond academia. Yeah, that's what the third bullet is. Other types of career paths. So successful strategies that applicants have used. So I've had a number of T32 applicants who have received this critique, implemented certain strategies, and then didn't get the critique on the resubmission and wound up getting funded. So what are those strategies? So I did have a client that was an Ivy League medical center with a longstanding T32 received this critique on their competing renewal. And in their resubmission, they offered to their trainees both one-day site visits and externships that lasted several months. So when it comes to, exposing trainees to careers, for example, in pharmaceutical industry or biotech startups, don't just offer one type of thing, like a one-day site visit can be really great, but for somebody who's really interested in that, a multi-month externship might be a better fit. either instead of or in conjunction with a one-day site visit. So give them multiple types of exposure to these other careers. It's also very typical for programs to structure a class where trainees are asked to develop a pitch for a company, in addition to classes where they create NIH mock study sections, et cetera. So I think, again, the risk here is that most of these programs are really good at doing things like mock study sections and writing clubs, but less good at setting up these types of externships and developing relationships with like biotech companies or pharmaceutical companies where you can also expose students to those types of careers. And again, related to that, you have limited industry training opportunities because that's the problem is that these programs tend to be very focused on academia. So what might you do? Consider endowed or sponsored research student opportunities. Offer an external seminar series to industry partners. This one I think is particularly effective, and I've seen many T32 grantee institutions implement this. The reason why it's so juicy is that it helps industry scientists stay current in scientific areas, and it encourages collaboration between academia and industry. So it's another place where you're really trying to strengthen those relationships. And some of you come from universities where those relationships are already pretty strong. You've got well-established collaborations with industry partners, and in other places, not so much. And even in places where that collaboration is pretty strong, it isn't necessarily filtering down to the T32 trainees. So you want to make sure you're taking advantage of that. And that seminar series where you're inviting people from industry to come in and speak can be hugely beneficial, not just to the T32 trainees, but also in strengthening that collaboration on your campus. So successful strategies some of my other clients have used is company fellowship programs, which again looks a lot more like a multi-month externship, for example, than like a one-day site visit. So just some things to think about. So advantages to company fellowship programs. For the company, it brings in people with fresh ideas and perspective coming in from academia. They are able to give back and train the next generation of scientists, which, like in academia, many people in industry are passionate about doing that. And it also gives them the opportunity to recruit new talent. And as you, the person who is the PI on the T32 training program or the grantee on that application, it creates a pipeline for you to place your trainees in jobs, which is a lovely thing when you're applying for your competing renewal. The advantage to the student is that they learn to think from an industry perspective, whether or not they ever go and work in industry. So this is an important thing even for academic researchers. It allows them to acquire skills to help transition to potential industry employment, and it teaches them how to work as part of a team and to give and take feedback, particularly outside of the setting of academia, because it's very different to work with people who are in a for-profit company than it is to work in academia. Those are two vastly different things, and it's a really good thing for your trainees to understand how to do both. You have limited venture capital training opportunities. So obviously an easy fix to that is to find a place in a VC for your trainees. And for most of the organizations represented here, you're in geographic areas where this should not be that hard to do because they exist in your geographic region. You could also develop a program for your fellows in which one can learn venture creation. So, that would be more of a didactic spin than a experiential hands-on thing, but that could be really helpful too. Doing both of them is even better. And a successful strategy that one of my T32 applicants employed was to teach students how to present and pitch to a VC audience. You only conduct quantitative and not qualitative assessments of your training program. I have seen this more often than not on T32 summary statements. This is a really, really common critique on center grant applications as well. But particularly on T32s and really complex cooperative agreements like the CCTIs, the CTSA program, the Clinical and Translational Science Award programs. This is a big one on those as well. So you want to use both qualitative and quantitative assessments, which allows you to obtain a better measure of the effectiveness, the impact of the training. And I have to say, in the last like 5 to 10 years on multi-project type complex awards from NIH, so center grants and complex use submissions, um, I would say that reviewers and program staff are really pushing and challenging applicants to think of non-traditional ways to measure impact, which would mean like beyond grants and publications that are landed by trainees, for example. And it's not easy to do to demonstrate impact, that beyond those two things, it's very tricky to do. So many of my successful applicants um, will, throughout the duration of the training, of the T32 training, they will survey for future goals and intent to stay in research. And the other thing, which I don't think I've put here, is that many of these clients actually hire a consultant to do this. And there are, small consulting groups that specialize in putting together programs for a combination of quantitative and qualitative training. They're not that expensive. And if you engage them from the point of writing the grant application and building their services into the budget, your application is more likely to fare well in review, because reviewers know that you're taking impact very seriously. In terms of the responsible conduct of research, the one of the critiques that I often see is that RCR is not fully integrated into the program and the overall curriculum, and it's not clear how RCR is reiterated by all faculty during the training. So I've kind of collapsed this comment. This is like collected from like half a dozen different summary statements and worded in slightly different ways, but it all kind of amounts to the same thing, is that RCR is just like a one-off, exists in a vacuum. It doesn't permeate the whole program. That's the kind of comment that I typically see. So what you want to do is integrate formal RCR components at multiple stages of trainee development, not just as like a one-off type thing, and describe how all program faculty will reiterate and augment key RCR elements when they are mentoring trainees in their labs. So it's RCR has to be mentioned not just in that section, but in the training program itself, in the curriculum, in the descriptions of the mentors. You should talk about how, scientific rigor is at the heart of what they do, that it's, something that is integrated throughout all the processes in their labs. And that they will specifically train their mentees on this. It has to be reiterated outside of the RCR plan. It's got to be woven throughout the entire curriculum. You are not training researchers in methods that facilitate knowledge sharing. So this is a comment that I used to see a lot more 5 years ago, but I still sometimes see this. So instead of like webinars that go away, choose a platform that builds and has memory and lifetime, especially because collaborators are often in geographically disparate areas. So, for example, I've had clients who have used like discussion boards and wikis built on specific topics, so that it exists and it builds and it's there archivally for people to look at. The program training and reproducible research is inadequate. So I have had clients who have suggested, and again, that's a very generalized statement. I was just trying to kind of summarize that theme among many comments that are made across T32 summary statements I've read. So I've had clients who have used things like electronic lab notebooks to enhance reproducibility and transparency. Make sure your data are widely available to anyone who should have access to it. And incorporate into the curriculum discussions about how to address reproducibility in manuscripts, and particularly in writing to the rigor scoring criteria on future NIH grant applications that the trainees will write, and addressing it in the manuscripts for papers that they're going to write on their research. And then finally, the last one, output of trainees is poor. So this would be like for people who are doing competing renewals. So make manuscript and grant submissions a required part of the IDP and increase workshops and courses for trainees on writing of manuscripts and grant applications. Sometimes the output is not poor, sometimes follow through is poor. It's really hard to track what people are submitting. So this is part of what makes the data tables tricky to put together is that you have to keep track of what manuscripts and grants your trainees are applying for. And that can be a little bit of a tricky thing. So work with faculty to ensure that they are actively mentoring and writing of manuscripts and grant applications and increase frequency of review of the number of submissions from trainees. So if any of you are interested in writing a T32, I would encourage you to check out my course, Master the T32, recently updated again. And I will say that the overwhelming majority of you have access to this course at no additional charge. Most of you are coming in on institutional memberships to the full library. And even within the T32, you can, because most of you have access to my courses with no additional charge. Within the T32, you can propose that your trainees will be using the courses to help them learn how to write competitive NIH grant applications, and that they'll be attending the live stream boot camps and the live Q&A like this and the virtual office hours. You can build that right into the grant application. And for most of you, there's no additional cost to that because your organization already applies for it. So okay, so that is my spiel for that. And if people have any questions on this or any other topic, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. While we wait to see if people have questions, I will review the schedule of upcoming topics for mini tutorials. So today is August 5th. We will be skipping the second session in August, which would have been on the 19th. My office is closed for the last 2 weeks of August. My team will be off doing their thing. I'll be traveling. So we will all be back in the office at the end of the month. And we have rescheduled that canceled August 19th session to September. There'll be an extra session in September. So we'll be back on for the Ask the Grant Writing session on September 2nd, where I'll be presenting on when are you ready for an NIH institutional training grant. Then September 9th, which is the reschedule of the August 19th. I've had several requests for a mini tutorial on how to select a review panel for an NIH submission. So I'll be going through doing a reporter search and coming up with similar projects and then scrolling through the project to see where they were reviewed, and also coming up with possible study section options using the CSR ART search engine. And then once you have some options, going back to reporter and doing a search specifically on the potential study section that you're going to name, and then discussing it with the program officer. So that's a request I've gotten in the surveys a number of times. So I'll be doing that on September 9th. September 16th, I'm going to be giving a session. Many of you probably saw that the Center for Scientific Review, in terms of the simplified review framework, they not that long ago, they interviewed not department chairs, chairs of study sections, so of review panels, to ask like a half a dozen of them, hey, how do you think it's going with the new scoring criteria? And there was a series of videos that CSR put out on what those study section chairs said about what they felt was working or not working about the new scoring criteria. And I watched them all multiple times and then grouped their comments into themes. And then I weighed on whether or not I agreed with them based on my reading of the summary statements and the perspective of my applicants. And I wrote a blog post on that, a pretty lengthy blog post on it, and did a little social media on that. And it's just like, it's been going like gangbusters. People are hugely interested in this topic. So I scheduled a presentation of my thoughts on that for September 16th. So the title of that is How's It Going with the New Scoring Criteria? Meg weighs in on study section share feedback on the new simplified review framework. So, and then September 30th, Rachel Sibeli will be coming back to talk about project management, probably for human subjects projects. So that is what we have on tap for you for the upcoming 2 months. We are now booked through, I think, mid-February for topics, but please feel free to send me any topics that you would like to see me present on. You can email that to meg@bouviergrant.com. I'm always happy to take suggestions from people about topics they would like me to present on. If you miss any of these sessions or want to watch any past mini tutorials on various topics, on your dashboard, you have bonus mini tutorials. You can just go in and scroll the topics of the mini tutorials and find one that's relevant to you. They're on a whole array of shorter topics that don't fit into the courses that I present logically. Um, and um, and yeah, I think that's it. So if there are no other questions, I think we will wrap up. I wish you all a happy August. We'll be returning on September 2nd. I will, of course, I still have my virtual office hours this Friday, so 2 days from today, August 7th, 2026. Feel free to drop in there and come ask me your submission specific questions. And otherwise, I wish you all the best of luck, as the French would say, courage. And I will see you all after August. I'll be returning from a kayaking trip in Alaska with my son, so I should be rested and in fine fettle to talk about NIH grants again. So I wish you all a happy summer, and I'll see you again in September. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.